What's up, FA Nation? It's time for another edition of Waiver Wire Tuesday. We're going to help you dominate the waiver wire so that you can win your NFL Week 12 and going forward into the playoffs, because it's time to start thinking about strength of schedule, how we start to build these playoff teams to win. We had a great game last night between the Tampa Bay Bucks and the Los Angeles Rams. May have changed some opinions on some players. I'm going to ask my partner here, John Impemba, all the things we want to know about the waiver wire and more. John, how's it going today?
Yeah, things are doing great, Jen, and you're right. I mean, listen, we're heading into week 12 now. Fantasy playoffs for most leagues start in week 14. So, I mean, it's crunch time here. I know trade deadlines have passed in a lot of leagues. If not, they're coming up this week. So, we always say, waiver moves that you make right now could have a real impact on whether or not, you hit going into the championship weeks of fantasy football. So now's the time to spend the money if you have it, find the right matchups, plan ahead. We always say earlier in the season, don't look too far, get there first. Well, now we're here. So now is when you want to start setting yourself up to put yourself in position to be successful as we head into the fantasy football playoffs.
Right. And I have to say myself this morning, because I'm in playoff contingent for a lot of races, I am scouring. So this is a really important episode the next few weeks to really help you guys win, because, man, it's just so much at stake. It feels like this season, like extra,
And a lot of leagues are, they're very close in standings. Mere points could separate teams. So every point counts at this point.
Yeah, sorry for this bright sunlight, but I don't know if it's shimmering off me from the.
I'm a little bit jealous, honestly, that you have sunlight. Because, we're in the gloomy days of New England weather around. Yeah, it's 35 degrees this morning. So
this is a Scott Fishbowl shirt, but it kind of looks like a superhero thing, I guess, at this point. So I'm just gonna sit.
You're always glowing, Jen. So I just.
Yeah. All right. So number one waiver claim of the week. Who is your number one guy this week?
I mean, I guess it really depends on the position, right? If you're looking for a quarterback, I think the way, surprisingly, that we've seen, Kirk Cousins play lately, I know that it's potentially without Adam Thielen because he's dealing with, his COVID issue. But, Cousins now, the last 3 weeks, he has 8 passing touchdowns. Now he goes up against Carolina. It's not a great defense. They're going to be pretty run heavy, but if you're looking for a streaming option at the quarterback position, I mean, this is a great spot to go ahead and maybe lean on Cousins. They like to throw the ball to Dalvin Cook as well. So, sure, Dalvin's going to get a lot of work here. His involvement in the passing offense helps Cousins also. So, plenty of time for Thielen to get back, get healthy, and play this week. But Cousins, for me, if you need a quarterback, if you just lost Joe Burrow, Cousins good to add.
Yeah, let's talk about that. For the people that lost Joe Burrow, I think you're going to have to try to get out there right away, because people are going to be trying to snap up these quarterbacks just to block you. Right. So if you're in the playoff contention, don't be afraid to spend money if you need to. I kind of like the looks of Derek Carr. How do you feel about Derek Carr? I mean, he's got a good matchup this week. I looked Atlanta.
Yeah.
I mean, even Taysom Hill looked good versus Atlanta.
That's true. Taysom Hill did look good versus Atlanta, and it helped him running the football. So I think maybe that's my one worry here is, if you look at recent performances out of Carr, those games have really been run dominant. We've seen Jacobs have really strong games. Now, they were forced into a shootout against Kansas City, and therefore Carr had, 3 passing touchdowns, 275 yards, his best fantasy performance since week 7. This is a game against Atlanta where, maybe it won't be a shootout. Maybe Julio Jones is going to be out, and we've seen how struggled Matt Ryan has looked. And they run the ball, with Jacobs, and therefore it kind of limits what we need out of Carr to get us over that fantasy hump. I mean, the 3 previous games before week 11 against Kansas City, 154, 165, and 111 yards passing. So, fantastic matchup against Atlanta, allowing the most fantasy points to quarterbacks in standard leagues this year. So I don't blame you for targeting it. I just wonder if this is going to be a game where they're going to have to play from behind and throw, or if it's one where they're just going to hand the ball off to Josh Jacobs and he's going to run.
But would you rather start, say, Matt Stafford versus Houston with a possibly bum thumb, or Derek Carr versus Atlanta?
I think it's really going to come down to me for whether or not Kenny Golladay is going to be able to play in this game. Now, they have a Thursday game, so we'll know that answer before we have to make that decision. Golladay, I think I saw that he was limited or didn't practice, but he's a big factor, obviously, in that offense. And if he's able to get on the field, limited participant on Monday. So, if he's able to get on the field in this game, it's Houston. It's a great spot, for them to go ahead and attack. So, even Cam Newton last week threw for 360 yards against them, and Newton hasn't really thrown the football that well this season. So, I think I may still lean Stafford. They are home. When he looked good 2 weeks ago with the thumb, last week, I don't know, something in Carolina, that offense just wasn't running well. Hopefully maybe Swift will be back in time. I know he's still dealing with his concussion, is going to be questionable to play or not, but his involvement in the passing offense helps as well. So I like Stafford. If Golladay plays, I'll probably lean in that direction.
Okay. Now, what about Daniel Jones? And can we now say that Daniel Jones is the best quarterback in the NFC East?
I think they have the best potential, if you want to say that. I really like the receiving weapons that he has around him. He isn't very good at utilizing them. The offensive line is actually last in the NFL. I wrote an article today about the Seahawks defense and how I like them because they're facing the Giants coming up. The Giants offensive line ranks dead last in pass blocking efficiency. Daniel Jones has been under the most pressures this season, and on his dropbacks, it's almost 40% of his dropbacks he's under pressure. So he doesn't have a lot of time really to scan the field there and throw. But they are coming out of a bye. They are facing Cincinnati, which isn't a great defense, as we've seen. So sure, there's definitely some potential upside. He also adds a little bit of a running flair, so maybe there. But Jen, I actually liked what I saw out of Andy Dalton last week. And I thought the Cowboys offense was going a little bit under the radar, especially in DFS. They were so priced down. I actually had a stack, using them. 203 yards, sure, not a ton, but the 3 touchdowns there. They are going up against Washington this week. I know, again, they have a strong pass rush there, but, I honestly don't hate it. CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott, those are weapons that Dalton, if he can just manage the game efficiently, can be productive.
That game right now, FanDuel Sportsbook has it at 46.5, the Washington-Dallas game. I was looking at that thinking, I think that could go over.
It could be a sneaky over. You have a bad defense with Dallas. Over. The one thing really is, what do we do with Alex Smith here? Smith continues to play like good quarterbacking, but largely he's a game manager. You're not getting a ton of fantasy upside out of him unless they're trailing in those games. The game against Detroit, he had to throw 55 times, but he didn't even throw a touchdown in that one. I think, Washington's going to want to go ground heavy with this one. Antonio Gibson ran for over 100 yards against Dallas a few weeks back. So, I think Alex Smith is certainly an upgrade over Kyle Allen or Dwayne Haskins. I don't think he has like the flair of those guys when it comes to touchdown upside. So 46.5 is probably a good number. I think I could also see it going over though as well, just because it doesn't take a lot of points, it seems like, to get over 46. A couple touchdowns scored, some field goals. I think those are doable.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, I'm going to ask you about some running backs because, man, everybody needs an extra running back, right? So the number one person that jumps out to me for Thursday is Gus Edwards. Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins both testing positive for COVID. Right. And so the question is, are they going to be able to be back in time for a Thursday night game? And if not, it has to be Gus Edwards, right? Yeah. But how much would you spend on Gus Edwards knowing this is probably a 1-week rental?
Well, I guess it depends on where you are, right? If this is a must-win for you this week and you have, a Dobbins or you really need a bailout this week at the running back position, I think you have to spend, a good chunk of your money. This is a run-first offense, whether it's a tough matchup or not. They do nothing but really run the football. And the Gus Bus actually had success against Pittsburgh a handful of weeks back. 16 carries, 87 yards, and a touchdown. In that game, Mark Ingram didn't play. It was just him and Dobbins in the backfield there. Both had success in that matchup against Pittsburgh. Now you take out Dobbins, you take out Ingram, and if Edwards is the only guy that's back there, he's going to get the majority of the carries. We're not going to see Justice Hill take over to the Dobbins role and see 10-plus carries. That's just not what he's going to do. So I think Edwards is going to be the guy that you have to go out there and grab. I would probably spend upwards of 50% of my budget on him if I really needed a running back.
We saw Cam Akers actually get a touchdown last night. Very exciting. Both teams did not seem to use the run game last night, which is interesting because last week versus Seattle, we thought the Rams would definitely throw because why wouldn't you? Seattle giving up the most points to opposing wide receivers, but they didn't. They decided to keep it on the ground. And we got that strange game, 2 touchdowns for Malcolm Brown. Darrell Henderson was really involved, and Cam Akers led the team in rushing attempts. But last night it was all in the air. And thank you, Robert Woods, for my Monday Night Miracle. Thank you very much. But what are we going to do with Cam Akers? Could he come on? Could they start to mix this up? They're giving him a little bit more opportunity. He seems to be a very talented back. Is it possible that he could be a sneaky play that we should start stashing now if he's still out there?
I'm not totally biting on this yet. It wasn't a great spot for them really to run the football against Tampa, as we, seen most teams struggle against Tampa. He was only on the field for 17% of the snaps. So it was actually less than he had played the prior 2 weeks. He saw 21% against Miami. He saw 26% against Seattle, went all the way down to 17%. I mean, I wish they would use him more, right? Like we all assume that he's the most talented back in that backfield, but it's still sort of a three-headed monster there. And then you're going up against San Francisco this week. And I know San Francisco's defense is banged up, but they still rank pretty highly against the run. So I'm not really sure what to expect for Akers this week. It seems like they're at least going to put him on the field, which is more than we could say about what he was doing in the prior week. So, if you want to stash in case there's an injury, maybe, but, the matchup's coming up, it's hard to predict what Akers is going to do, and I don't think you can really rely on him in your lineup.
Yeah, it's probably true, but I kind of like him if you have a deep league as a stash.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you. If you're in a really deep league and you need some sort of guy on your bench in case Brown or Henderson get hurt, which they've both already done this season, it's possible. Again, I don't like the matchup against San Francisco, but they do have New England week 14, the Jets in week 15, and then the Seattle in week 16. So, some potential spots for him to be productive.
So I have to ask you now about one of your own, a Patriot. Rex Burkhead looks like he could be headed to the IR. Now, we were right about Damien Harris last week. Fingers crossed. Right. It's hard to predict the Patriots' backfield, but we got the Damien Harris one pretty correct. Now, they've activated Sony Michel, so I got to ask you about Sony Michel. Mm-hmm. But in addition, I really have to ask you about James White. Is James White going to be back in the conversation, and is he worth the ad now that there is no Rex Burkhead?
Yeah, listen, I think you kind of have to at least give White consideration. The fact that he had 6 catches in that game against Houston. Michel was activated but inactive for the game, so take that for however you want to read it. Yeah, I think if White's been dropped in your league, now's the time to re-pick him back up. He can definitely fill the Burkhead role. Now, it's a little bit more predictable when White's on the field that he's probably going to be the pass catcher, but he did see 5 carries in that game. White is not unfamiliar with having to run the football. I mean, if anybody remembers, the Super Bowl against Atlanta, that final drive, it was White that was getting a lot of those carries in the shotgun next to Brady. So he even scored the game-winning touchdown. So it's not like he's incapable of being a running back in the league. He's just better suited to catch the football. So Michel's definitely the wild card because they've had 3 running backs active. So if they need Michel to be more of a spell back for Harris, I think we could see that. Before going on IR, Michel had over 100 yards on 9 carries. So, he's fresh legs. Harris has been banged up at times. I don't even know why they went away from Harris in the second half of that game. He was really strong in the first half. And then I think he saw like 2 carries in the third quarter or something. Like something crazy really ruined a lot of his upside there. But yeah, I'm in on James White, and I'm in on a flyer on Michel as well.
Yeah, and Michel more likely to eat into Damian Harris's workload, I think. James White's workload, like he is that change of pace.
He's the only guy that can catch passes outside of J.J. Taylor. If J.J. Taylor gets activated over Sony Michel, I mean, that could be something to at least pay attention to.
Okay, so J.J. Taylor, we'll look out for that. All right, I got to ask you about Salvon Ahmed, again, leading the backfield for Miami. He's looking really, really good. Mm-hmm. But my question to you is, what is your concern level with we go out and spend a lot of money on Salvon Ahmed and then Myles Gaskin's back?
Well, that is a concern. I think we're entering the week in which Gaskin can return, or it's next week. It's close. He was only expected to miss the minimum. So I feel like last week was the week you wanted to spend your money on Ahmed. And I think in most leagues, people probably did do that. But if he's floating out there, I mean, it's hard to look at, the production he's had and not at least be interested. I love that he had the 5 catches last week. It shows the versatility that it can bring to you, especially in PPR or half PPR formats where he's not totally getting it done on the ground. The matchups coming up against the Jets and Cincinnati are great for him. But again, as soon as Gaskins is activated, what is Ahmed's role going to end up being?
Yeah, that's my concern there. So I wouldn't overspend. I mean, you got to do what you got to do to win at this point. And if you need a running back, he's talented and great. And maybe they won't take the ball out of his hands, but we have seen that Miami, they have a short leash. I mean, they benched Tua.
Yeah, and it was an interesting decision there. Flores said that Flores says they're still trying to win games, which makes sense. Like they're right there.
Yeah, they need
the playoff picture, right? And he felt, at that time they still had a chance to win, and Tua wasn't playing well, so he put Fitzpatrick in the game. But I mean, I feel like you can't really have your cake and eat it too. You're either trying to develop your young quarterback, and you need to rely on him in those games to sort of come through and win them for you. Instead, you pull him off the bench. You have Fitzpatrick out there. And if anything, maybe it rattles Tua a little bit, that he got benched. And I know Flores after the game immediately said, nope, like Tua's our starter. We just felt like we had a chance to win, so we took him out. It's like, well, that's not really a confidence boost there. You felt like you had a chance to win, and you pulled him. So
yeah, you put Fitzpatrick in. He threw a pick in the end zone. But anyway.
Right, exactly. So Fitzmagic only works once in a while,
He only works if he has the whole game to himself. That's what I think. I don't think he's someone you put in to try to win a game. Anyway, interesting decision, but there you go. All right, I'm going to ask you about someone else from your Patriots. We're going to go over to wide receiver, and I got to ask you about Damiere Byrd. Okay, we all thought it was going to be Jacoby Myers, and Jacoby Myers still gets some attention. But my question to you is now, does every opposing defense, now know that Jacoby Myers is the number one? He's going to start getting shut down a little bit like Travis Fulgham in Philadelphia. I feel like that's happening now. And is Damiere Byrd someone that we should be keeping our eyes on? Should we go get him? I mean, it was a massive game. What were his numbers? Like over 130 yards or something?
Yeah, 6 for 132 and a touchdown on 7 targets. So
on 7 targets. Now, you won't always be facing the Houston pass defense.
Right. So here's my take on Byrd. He benefited from the fact that the Patriots were trailing a lot in this game. They had a throw. As I mentioned, Cam Newton had the 365 yards passing, second highest total on the season. Now, again, Patriots can certainly be in a shootout against Arizona. Kyler Murray trucking it downfield. They may need to keep up and throw the football. Byrd should have always sort of been on your radar as like a deep flyer anyways. If you look at his snap counts this year, only twice has he played below 80% snap counts. He's largely been targeted a handful of times each game this season, but he's also had a couple games now, 3 games where he's seen at least 9 targets. He had 7 targets last week. So he's always been there. He's always been part of the offense. He's always been on the field, always very involved. The Patriots running offense has just always been so run heavy. And in games where it's more competitive, they're able to kind of run the clock and play an offense that way. But with Houston stepping, the pedal to the metal right away, they were forced to throw, forced to keep up, and that allowed the passing attack to sort of expand there. If you're in a deep league, you need a flyer this week. Byrd, sure. But he's just as likely to give you, 3 for 40 as he is 6 for 100. So, no more than a wide receiver 3 deep league flex play.
I want to ask you about Jets wide receiver Denzel Mims, because he's definitely getting a lot more attention with Joe Flacco under center. And I think he's really talented. He was someone we were excited about coming out of the draft and thought that it was a good choice for the Jets. He and Rashad Perriman. So we saw with Joe Flacco, both Rashad Perriman and Denzel Mims seem to be incredibly relevant. And Jamison Crowder just seems to disappear. So is this something that we want to wait until we find out if it's Sam Darnold or Joe Flacco, or is Mims maybe worth a deep ad?
So I actually like Mims sort of regardless. The fact that he's been on the field for over 90% of the snaps in 3 straight weeks, back-to-back weeks with 8 targets. And there was a game earlier this season where he had 7 targets against Buffalo.
Right.
And Darnold was actually the quarterback in that game. So Darnold looked to him in that game against Buffalo as well, which was fantastic. So I think he's part of the offense. You're right, the Crowder thing, it's a little bit of a mystery. I wonder if he's still not fully 100%, right? He came back from that injury, hasn't really done too much. I initially chalked that first game back to being the Patriots and how they always take away your top option. But yeah, he hasn't really been too involved, and Flacco's just had a lot of fun throwing it downfield to guys like Perriman and Mims. So I'm picking up Mims where he's available. I like him in DFS plays as well. Last week he was, I think, $3,300 or something like that. I mean, just super cheap. For a guy that's getting that volume. He's a big play guy, so his catch percentages are low. We need to get a couple of those to really pay off, but I like him as an ad.
And I think it goes without saying that if Michael Pittman is still available, he's absolutely a must-add. He's emerging as the wide receiver one over there in Indianapolis, and I don't know if it's coincidence, but the Indianapolis Colts seem to be on a bit of a roll. Phillip Rivers looking a little more frisky, a little more encouraging to put on your fantasy team or in your DFS lineups. But would you say Michael Pittman's the number one now?
I mean, I think so. I mean, he came into the year and we expected him to be the number two, next to T.Y. Hilton. Kind of arguing back and forth between him or Paris Campbell, which one we're going to emerge, and then Campbell got hurt, but then Pittman got hurt. So you had to kind of wait a while for him to really come back. But in the last 3 games, he's been on the field over 80% of the snaps, which has been fantastic. And then he gets this matchup again against Tennessee 2 weeks ago, 7 catches, 101 yards against Tennessee. We know how bad their pass defense is. So I'm in on Pittman this week. I think, again, like you said, the way we've seen Rivers play lately has really surprised me. I didn't really know if he had this type of game left in him, but he's gotten into some shootouts and he's been winning those shootouts. So I'm buying in on Pittman if he's still available.
All right. I'm going to ask you about over in Denver. First of all, I was surprised that Denver won that game versus Miami. I was really kind of out on Drew Lock based on the potential injury and the fact that he was playing injured and all of that jazz, but they did end up coming out victorious there.
Yeah. Not really due to him. He wasn't really
not really due to him, but he was at least efficient enough to get them through the game. And I stayed up Jerry Jeudy. I stayed away from all those guys. But assuming that he's healed up and feeling better next Sunday, how do you feel about Tim Patrick?
I mean, listen, I think, Patrick has looked good since coming back. He did sort of his production was largely, I'm not sure if you saw, it was one of the a bad beat prop or best bets prop or whatever, but the final play of the game, he caught like a 40-yard pass with 0 time left, and it really helped him get over that 100-yard mark. I mean, I like him. Listen, the target share continues to be there for him since he's come back, 9, 6, and 8. The 100 yards last week. Now it's New Orleans, Kansas City, teams where they're going to be sort of in shootouts, and he's really, he's largely been their number one receiver all season. While we like Jeudy and we like Fant, when Patrick's been on the field, he's been the guy. So I'll buy in on Patrick. I think people had dropped him due to the injury. Only 22% owned in ESPN leagues right now seems pretty low. So while I don't love Locke, I think these are games where they're going to be trailing. And we saw in games where they were going to be trailing, Locke had 3 straight games over 40 pass attempts. So Patrick works for me.
I like him too. And Nelson Aguilar, I think we've talked about him off and on so many times.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, this guy seems to be the number one, not Henry Ruggs. I mean, I don't know why. He's a little bit boomer bust, but when he booms, and he gets a lot of touchdowns.
I have no feel for what's going on outside of Darren Waller in this Raiders passing offense. It is frustrating, as somebody who took a lot of Ruggs in fantasy this year, where his draft stock was great, but I thought he was going to come in and be that number one guy. And they're just not throwing to him. They're going Aguilar's way. The passing attack, like I said, has really been inconsistent outside of last week. The 3 weeks prior, low passing numbers for Carr there. So, if you think they're going to find themselves in a shootout this week, then I think Aguilar's on the radar for sure. Maybe if you want to stash them for when there are better matchups down the stretch, Aguilar could be in play as well.
All right, let's go over to the wasteland of tight end. If you guys are like me, and you probably are, you're probably just digging around each week, hoping, debating Jimmy Graham or Jordan Akins, things like this, because it's really come down to that. That's what we're doing. So let's actually talk about Jordan Akins. Do you think Jordan Akins is someone that's worth an ad? I mean, he had a great game, something like over 80 yards, I believe.
Yep, 5 for 80
yards.
Yep, 5 for 83 on 6 targets.
But my question to you is, will that be limited by Darren Waller, potentially a 6'7", great end zone target as well? What is your feeling about Jordan Akins? Is he someone that we should start looking at adding?
I don't know. I mean, listen, he's another guy that I think if Cobb is ruled out, and I think Stills was hurt in that game as well.
That's right.
If those guys are missing, I think it definitely increases Akins' appeal to me. Now, I know Kiki Kuti scored the touchdown last week and filled in, but I don't love him either. So if they're down receivers, I think it increases Akins' viability again. Was that a factor for why he saw the 6 targets that he did after not really being targeted much in prior weeks? It's possible. He is the pass catching option, tight end option on that team. So I definitely have flyer interest in Akins if we find out that Cobb and Stills and whatnot are out.
Yeah, I had one eyeball on the game, and I feel like he was getting targeted before Randall Cobb and Kenny Stills.
Yeah, Cobb went out early. I don't really remember when Stills got out. But yeah, Cobb only had the touchdown, 2 catches, and he hurt his toe or foot or something like that. So it looks like he's actually already been ruled out for Thursday, Cobb. So yeah, you know what? Oh. Against Detroit, then I could go ahead and take a stab.
Detroit versus the tight end. Well, it doesn't matter. He would essentially be used a receiver. So
yeah.
I mean, it's doable. I mean, how do you feel about? Sorry to go off tangent, but I gotta ask you this. Oh. Duke Johnson. Okay, so like Duke Johnson stinks. He's getting all the opportunity. He's making nothing of it. However, this week they face Detroit. Do you roll out Duke Johnson again?
So I think you could because of the matchup. I mean, the one thing I tried to warn people about Duke Johnson, heading into this stint as him as the lead running back is, oftentimes, when Duke Johnson has his, high yards per carry, it's third down defense. It's running against, multiple corners and safeties on the field, not the front sevens that an early down back would face. So I was trying to tell people to sort of temper their expectations for him on the ground because we've never really seen him be an effective, full-time running back. And I think that's why teams haven't used him in that role. They like him more as the change of pace, as the third down back, because his skill set fits better getting up against a lighter front where maybe he finds some space and can use his speed and shiftiness. This is going to be Detroit, but again, he's still going to get early down carries against tougher front sevens. And if he can't lower the shoulder and break through, or he can't get open space, it's going to be hard for him to really find success. But it is Detroit. It is a matchup that running backs all season long have taken advantage of. So I don't mind it, but again, you got to temper your expectations here on the upside that he brings. The running game this year for Houston, just in general, really lackluster. The offensive line has struggled. On my David Johnson love really hasn't come through for him. So I can't imagine Duke have any more success.
I can't either. But it's just such a tricky one because he gets the volume. But when you're trying to debate whether, playing him or playing DJ Chark, it's really tricky because you see the volume for Duke Johnson and you see that matchup, but he just hasn't been very good. And then you got DJ Chark over here, and we don't know if it's going to be Jake Luton or, I'm trying to, or say like Marquise Hollywood Brown. Like there are these people that are like, it's just really a tough decision.
I started calling him straight to VHS Brown. He's no longer Hollywood to me.
He is straight to VHS. Just a couple more tight ends because we're coming up on the half hour already.
Yeah.
Jordan Reed, if he's available, yes.
Yeah, I mean, targets were there. My one concern, heading into last week was the snap count because his first game back, he only played like 13 snaps, but he bumped him up to 40% snap count going into their bye. I'll go ahead and buy into him seeing a larger role. I think he works out. And I like Dalton Schultz as well. It was surprising to me when I was doing some tight end research to see that Schultz was the 6th most targeted fantasy tight end this season.
Yep.
I put him in my contrarian corner video last week. I had him in my DFS lineups, and he bailed me out with a late touchdown. So it was all It was all great work for it there. So I like it. It'll work out for me again and again. He got the 6 targets. So in a position where it's a bunch of hodgepodge and who really knows what's going to happen. A guy that's at least getting targets, I'm going to keep on going to.
Yeah, I like it. All right, guys, that will wrap up today's edition of our Waiver Wire episode. Remember, if you have any questions, we are online 24/7 at fantasyalarm.com. In the chat, you can ask us questions there. We still have our Black Friday special. It's only going now through Cyber Monday. $97, all the sports.
13 sports. 13 sports, all the coverage you need, DFS and seasonal. No payments again until January 1st, 2022.
2022. That's a long time from now.
Literally can't be a better deal.
There really can't be, because you can win $97 in one DFS win easy. Like
use the lineup generator, play the showdown slate. If you haven't seen Fantasy on last night, cash a ticket into the fantasy football main event. They split first place in the showdown Sunday night for like 40 grand, and then last night they came in second but seventh and won seventh. So I mean, like, listen, it pays for itself, like you said. The lineup generator. Basketball season's coming up. You have myself, Justin Fensterman, Adam Ronas, James Grande, Sean Mitchell ready to give you DFS NBA content. We got college basketball picking up this week, college everything. It's all covered under the umbrella. $97 for.
And don't forget, baseball's coming back too.
Baseball's coming back. It's crazy how quickly all the sports are back. Hockey as well. Chris Morias and Andrew Dewhurst carrying the content. So get it now. No payments again until January 2022.
Yeah, get on it, guys. Get on it. All right, we will be back tomorrow. I won't be back, but someone will be back at the normal time.
It's Bender and Fancy doing the Thanksgiving DFS preview.
Oh, cool. Bender and Fancy doing the Thanksgiving DFS preview. By the way, we will have Thanksgiving DFS content out for you guys this week. Don't think we forgot about you there. We got you covered. We will see you guys tomorrow.